So Kevin, I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit about your journey in terms of, I know you left pharmacy school and, what prompted you to step into truly into spirituality and becoming a transformational life coach and helping people on their journey?
Sure. Well, I started out in pretty mainstream personal development. While I was in pharmacy school, before I even had this inkling to leave, like my intuition speaking to me to leave, I got into a network marketing company, which I really enjoyed. I was wanting to share, or in other words, sell, direct sales, to offer these healthy energy drinks. And at 20 years old, that sounded amazing, and that I can earn my own money on the side, which that never really panned out because it wasn't my true soul's purpose. But that did introduce me to personal development, because in that industry, it's very common to work on yourself, to develop yourself personally. And someone in that company recommended to read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which, if you're not familiar with that book, it's a classic in personal development, written way back in 1937. And that book blew my mind. It really opened me up to possibilities in life and realizing that I'm way more than whatever condition that I'm facing, that I have way more potential within me. And at age 20, 21, that really sparked something within me. And I believe that that was a part of my soul's path, because that started to get me more into spiritual thinking. But it wasn't introduced really to like spirituality and like spiritual awakening until I met my mentor it was like maybe a year and a half later, after I first started getting into personal development. And that's where I feel like I had kind of like an epiphany moment that I'm more than this human experience. And so we can go more into that, but that's ultimately what led me to leaving pharmacy, because I did not feel aligned with that career path, especially because it was very mainstream Western medicine. And I started to realize like I was not in the correct path. Like I didn't want to help people in a way of treating symptoms rather than getting to the root cause of why someone might be having illness in the first place.
Totally. And I love that you mentioned also your mentor, because I feel that, on the way to your soul purpose, you also need someone to guide you, right, along the way. And someone who has gone through it can kind of see your blind spot and that you may not be aware of, and help you as well get faster on your journey. Do you want to talk a little bit more about your mentor? And it's Mary Morrissey, if we can mention her here, but kind of understand also for our audience how having a coach and a mentor helping you on your soul purpose is quite important as well on the journey.
I'd be happy to. You hit the nail on the head saying that we all have blind spots, because in our human experience, we have a limited awareness. No matter how like aware you are, spiritually awake you are, we're still in this 3-dimensional human experience. And there are things that we don't know. And there are things that we don't know that we don't know. And there's this beautiful quote that illustrates this for me very well, is that it's hard to see the entire picture of your life when you're the one inside of that frame. It's impossible.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's extremely helpful to have support and also to help you learn things you have not known along the path. So for me, absolutely, my mentor has been instrumental in my transformation and change. And I first started working with her back, it was now at the recording this, like eight, almost 9 years ago now. And it changed my life. It was literally right after I left pharmacy school and made that decision to not continue. And I didn't really know what was next. Like I thought maybe like that the network marketing, direct sales would be like the career path for me, but it didn't end up being that. And I got into yoga, got trained as a yoga teacher as part of my path. And then later on, like started working for my mentor's company. But all of this had come from the weekly support of just connecting with my mentor and helping me realize that the paradigms or the limited belief systems, the way I was thinking up until that point was just from my past patterning, and was again limited because I didn't know what I didn't know. But so her help is just incredible. And I think it's important for all of us to have someone in our life to see what we can't see, and not a friend or a family member, because that's different. Like my wife is extremely helpful in my own growth path, but sometimes she's too close, even because we literally live together. Like we're very close together. And so it's sometimes we're both in the same kind of frame. And so having a third party, someone who is not a part of your circle of influence that is like with you every single day is really important, so that they can help you see what maybe you, or again, your friends or family can't see.
Exactly. And also, I think that it's also good to have someone who can be more objective and also will not hold back, right?
Right.
I know when I have my clients, sometimes I can be a bit tough, but you need that person who's there to push you and to be, again, a little bit tough with you, which sometimes your friends or family, may not want to hurt your feelings, for example. But yeah, this is where it's so important to have a coach and a mentor. And this is what also has helped me on my soul purpose journey as well, where I am.
Mm-hmm.
So why, some people who have not been so into looking into their purpose or why they're here, why is it important to be on purpose? Like, what are the benefits of being on purpose?
Yeah, I want to bring up another quote. I find that I'm an intellectual, like I'm scientific mind. And so I have a lot of these like ideas or quotes that I feel has helped me on my journey. It's the first thing that popped up in my mind when you asked that question, is a quote from Howard Thurman, who was Martin Luther King Jr.'s mentor. Speaking of mentors, he said, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive." And that has been inspiring me since the day I heard that, which I don't even remember exactly when, but it's probably early on in my journey. But I think that's why it's so important, is that you can live, and we all get the choice. That's the beautiful thing about being in this human experience, that we have free will. We don't have to go for our purpose. So it's actually okay. Like, that's in a way liberating. You don't have to like feel an obligation to or forced to, just because like, so many other people are doing it. But if you feel that calling, then the main benefit is actually that you're going to live an alive life. You're actually going to be on an adventure, or what is commonly termed as a hero's journey or a heroine's journey. And that kind of way of living life, I think, is the most, it's important for all of us, because in our journey in this human experience, the whole purpose is for us to grow as a soul. And if we're not leaning in to our purpose, then things get boring. Like, we just find like there's not like meaning in life. But when we connect with our purpose, even if it seems crazy, because it often will, it's like, what are you doing? Like, but you're then leaning into what feels like it's meaningful to you. And that there's a sense of aliveness that comes with that it's not just part of this human experience. Because yes, like, we all want to be happy, joyful, again, feel like we're on purpose or having fulfillment in whatever we're doing. But I believe it's also connected with our spirit. And that's literally what life itself wants. It's not just like a human desire or a selfish thing. It's something that this spark of life, whatever you want to call it, God, source, spirit, the infinite, it's this pull to greater life that we all have within us. And literally it's in everything in existence. We see that in this spiral of our universe, or our galaxy that we live in. It's this spiral of becoming or expansion that's happening. And then all the way down to like the microcosm is our DNA is a spiral. It's this pull of becoming that's everywhere present. It's this spiral kind of pattern. And we even see that in nature. It's like blades of grass literally will press through cement seeking greater life. And so, to answer that question kind of like a broad or bigger way, is that it's what's the benefit is that you'll be living in the flow of what life is meant to do with each and every one of us.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned flow as well, because that's what I don't know what you've observed in your own life, but I've noticed that the more I'm on purpose, the more things flow, right? It's like going over the current of a river and not against the river. And it's amazing the amount of synchronicities that start coming your way, and the help that start coming your way from the universe. It's actually really beautiful, which is also why this event is also about inner beauty, because the more so you're on purpose and the more inner beauty that you cultivate within you, the more you see so much beauty around you, and life becomes beautiful, no matter what's going on in the world, which we know right now could be quite tough. But even with that, there's so much beauty around us. It's just amazing. So
That's beautifully said. I agree.
I love it. So going further into the purpose. So I know because I've looked and listened at some of your amazing podcasts that you have, and some of the sessions that you have is about soul tools. So it's kind of like your soul toolkit, basically, per se. So can you go a little bit into that for the audience and some of the tools that they can be using on their soul purpose journey?
I'd be happy to, and thank you for asking. I first want to introduce why I call them tools, because in this path of living your purpose, living aligned with your soul, it can get quite airy or not really tangible sometimes. And honestly, I think there are parts of the journey that it needs to be that it not always have to be like tangible or like that you can like grasp it in a way, because really living your purpose is outside of the intellectual mind. But personally, for me, I think it's helpful to have some tangible things to hang your hat on, so to say. And so tools, I call them tools because if you want to create or build a life that's aligned with your soul's purpose, tools are helpful. Just like if you want to build a dream home, there's some basic tools that you can use, like a hammer, a saw, a drill, and then of course the materials like nails or wood that you work with. So that's why I call them tools. So the first tool, I mean, there's three that we can talk about today just for sake of time, but the first tool is, for me, what opened me up to my own awareness that I'm more than this human experience. I'm more than what Kevin Carton thinks of as he is Kevin Carton. So, because we all have this human experience where we have thoughts, emotions, and of course, our physical body that we express ourselves through. But to get a deeper connection with who we really are as a soul is extremely important so that we can direct this human experience to the place where we want to go. In other words, living our purpose. So the first soul tool is to notice what you're noticing. And this, it seems like often a non-tool, because I think anyone who even signs up for this kind of workshop or this kind of interview series, this event, I imagine will have some awareness that they're more than their human self, right? But how I found that getting ourselves trained, like our physical human experience trained to connect more and more with our soul self, like who we really are, then it becomes much more easy to live in alignment with our soul in this human experience. And so noticing what we're noticing is that doorway through to actually connect, because most people just notice what's going on in their life. And that can get quite frustrating, because if you are noticing what's going on in your life, noticing patterns, maybe certain habits that you feel are not serving you anymore, and you just feel stuck, that's very common for all of us. I think we've all at least experienced that at some point in our past, even, or maybe experiencing that right now, that there are patterns that we feel held back by, whether we're aware of it, as in like we're noticing what thought pattern it is, or again, what physical habit that we're in like a loop of, or even emotionally, or it could be some deeper subconscious beliefs that we're not fully aware of yet. But most people stop at that first level of awareness, is noticing, because you can notice it. But when you take a further step back, you then connect with who you really are as a soul. And this, another way of putting this is that you're being the observer, or as psychologists call this, they term it metacognition, so that you're aware of what you are aware of. And that creates what I call space between the pattern in this human experience and who you really are, so that you can then again direct or choose the path that you're going to go down in the future. Because it's not easy. If we're only believing that there were this human self, then we can feel a lot of resistance to change, because at a deep level, it seems like we're changing who we are, just at that human level. So noticing what you're noticing creates that space so that you can make changes much more easily, much more quickly.
Okay. And with that, and I totally agree with that, because that's something that I'm definitely doing in my life. But it takes practice. It's like a muscle that you keep building as well.
Exactly.
Which then requires presence. And I tell my clients, you need to be present, which meditation teaches you that, actually teaches you presence and teaches you to take a step back and be more the observer. Do you have, besides meditation, are there other ways that people can be more present, to be in that state of observing their life?
Yes.
Versus just
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a great question. And I think it's important for all of us to ask ourselves that, because you're right. Like meditation is a powerful tool, but that's like moments in time, or like in the morning, afternoon, or night. Like it's like a time outside of your normal life. So personally for me, the other tool I use, or the other way I access presence, is through breath. And not breath work. I mean, technically you can call it breath work, but it's simply being focused or aware of the breathing that's going on within your body. And so personally for me, I breathe in slowly. Like if I ever notice that I'm like kind of scattered or not present in my body and not noticing what I'm noticing, I'll literally just take a deep breath and pause and work on pausing my mind and taking it away from maybe the tasks on hand or what's going to happen in the next hour or so, and bring it within. And just maybe sometimes I even put my hand on my heart so I can feel the breath, and also the belly, because the more deeply you breathe, the more presence that you access. So taking a deep breath, feeling our body fill up with air, and then slowly exhale out through our mouth so that we are accessing more of our parasympathetic nervous system, or the relaxation response, so that we're not in this hurry and go and focus on external, that we focus internal. And from there, then we can re-access that point of power within, which is our soul, like who we really are. So the breath is extremely powerful. And I'll say one final thing about that is that our breath, it brings us into the present moment, because you can't breathe anywhere else. You can't breathe in the future, and you can't breathe in the past. It's impossible. The only place you can breathe is in the here and now. And so it's a simple thing, but as you practice that, it becomes kind of like an anchor to help you come back to this present moment. And the mind will try to, take you away, but that's why I say, like, I put my mind on my breath and focus on how it feels to breathe.
Totally. No, I love that. And I was thinking also, as you were speaking about, I do that, of course, in the morning, especially usually when I wake up in the morning, but often I go to a park, sit on a bench, focus on my breath, but just also observe the leaves falling, from the tree, observe the sun, the wind. And again, it brings presence. But then it allows me to really catch things I usually would never catch. And just, be more in tune with what's going on around me, but also be more present, which is why it's so important to take a step out sometime from our lives, right? Because we're so busy getting up. For some people, it's the kids, step in the car, going to work, and we just keep going, but we need to really stop sometimes and take some time, go into nature by yourself, and take some time to really also observe in that way, which again builds the muscle.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. So then the second tool that you mentioned as well.
Yes, let's get into it. So once we are in that state of noticing what we're noticing, we've created space. At least to some degree, are not feeling as held back or stuck by some limiting thoughts, beliefs, feelings, maybe habitual patterns of our life. Then we want to give more awareness to the things that we don't like in our life, which is quite a paradox, because especially in the spiritual community, it's always focus on what you would love. What's the vision, or where you'd love to go, and to eliminate negativity. And on an extreme scale, this can turn into toxic positivity. And that's not where we're going, which is why the second tool is notice your longing and notice your discontent. Because the only way we can make a change in our life is if we are aware of what we want to change. It's so basic, seems so basic, but like you were saying before, Liorah, that we don't often take time to be present or to be with ourselves, or to, like you said, go into nature. Like, we're so busy in our life. Well, that's a big reason why we're not actually accessing the power of our purpose, because we're giving our attention to so many other things. And even when we come to the second soul tool, again, it can seem like a paradox, because you don't want to focus on what's not working in your life. But these two signals, the longing and the discontent, are literally signals from your soul. It's where more life wants to express. Because as I was saying before, that spirit, the infinite, God, source, wants more or you can just call it life itself. It wants to express more by means of the channels through which life is happening. And we are a channel of that, just as, again, like a blade of grass or even an animal, like there's more life that wants to be expressed through anything. And so the place where that light comes through is our longings and our discontents. So quickly to define them, a longing is simply a desire of something that has not occurred yet in your life. Maybe you long to travel more. You long to make a difference in people's lives more. Like, you know that there's something that is calling you. You can even call it a calling. Is that longing, something that's sparking? Like that was me when I left pharmacy. I didn't know exactly what my purpose was at that time. I just knew it wasn't pharmacy. And I followed that call. And over time, it took me a few years to really get clear that my purpose is to be a coach and a speaker. And in other words, under it all is just a teacher. I am a teacher. I teach my clients. I teach people who come to my workshops. I teach, I mean, heck, I'm teaching right now. Like, it's just being a teacher, so that came through in many different ways. Like I shared, I got trained as a yoga teacher. That was a part of my purpose, but it wasn't like the real core of it. But the only way I navigated and discovered really my core purpose is through accessing the two signals, longings and discontents. So coming back to it, I know it went off on a tangent, but so the discontent. So I define the longing. Discontent is simply that any area of your life where you're not happy, or there are things that just feel off. You feel maybe a constriction or a contraction in that area of life. Like for me, before we started recording Liorah, you mentioned my wedding video that you watched. I longed for having a partner in my life, a deep, meaningful soulmate relationship. But so part of that was, before I met my wife and started dating her, the discontent was, like the relationships I've been in, they're not it. Like, it just feels like it feels off in a way. And especially when I was not in a relationship, the discontent was a loneliness. So those are different ways of looking at the longing and the discontent. And when you start to become aware, like you're actually noticing the longings and noticing the discontents, then you're starting to notice the patterns in your life that you've lived out or you've given energy to up until now. Because the only way, again, you can change something is by being aware of it first. And that takes courage. Say this is the final thing I'll say with this second soul tool. It takes courage to look at the longings, like honestly and fully look at the longings and discontents, because it's not fun. We don't like to acknowledge that. And at a subconscious level, many people are afraid or not wanting to look at those parts of their life because there's a part of them that doesn't feel like they can change. Like they just feel stuck. And so it's like, oh, what's the use? I'm just like kind of like sticking a finger in an old wound. But while that could be true for many people, we have to look at those things in order to make a change. So we have to. It's just a prerequisite to making a change and ultimately then, again, accessing our purpose.
Totally. I totally agree. And with that, would you recommend for someone, for example, for audiences listening now, would you recommend for them to maybe sit down and start writing down those longings and discontent, or is it something they can do through the help of a mentor or of a coach? How do you recommend for someone who would like to start on working on that?
It's a great question. And you hit the nail on the head. It's both, really. Like, you can absolutely do this process on your own. But I would recommend working with someone to do this because, again, it's uncomfortable. And chances are, if you tell yourself, yep, I'm going to take, half an hour and really give myself space to write down all of my longings and discontents in my life, there's going to be some resistance because it's not fun. And so when someone's holding you accountable, it's like, hey, you're going to do this next week and it's going to help you. And I'm going to check in with you on that when we talk again, then you're held accountable again. So absolutely, doing this with a mentor or a coach or someone that could support you is definitely helpful. But hey, if you feel like you could do it on your own, go for it, because you absolutely can. Like, because it really is a personal process. Like, even if you work with someone, that someone really can't tell you like really what your longings and discontents are, because it's unique to you or personal to you. But it's the accountability piece for that.
Yeah, no, totally. And if someone was to do it on their own, it's like looking at the mirror of ourselves. It's also holding ourselves with love, right? Because at the end of the day, all those were experiences to teach us, for us to grow, and just to remember that, at the end of the day, it was all a teaching experience, and there's no blaming here. Which is also what I tell my clients very often as well. It's just hold yourself with love and just see how you can take this for, as part of, like you said, your toolkit to then help you go to the next stage into your soul purpose.
Right. And Liorah, I want to add to that it was brilliant to say that, because that connects back to the first soul tool and why that's number one. Because when you're noticing what you're noticing, that's from your soul self, like who you really are, looking at your human experience, there's no judgment. It's like, if we're really truly in that space of our soul and who we really are, it's a place of love, because in spirit, it's all love. And so it's can be difficult. I'll say it's not difficult down the line as you develop this skill, but it can be difficult to view your life, especially those things that you want to change and you feel maybe stuck by, and it's been for some time. There could be judgment. So I'm glad you said that. And that goes right back to notice what you're noticing, so that you're not feeling like you're attached or like stuck there. And it's not really who you are, but you're just being aware of the patterns in your life.
Exactly. Fantastic. And then, so to the third tool.
Yes. Third one. This is where the rubber meets the road, I find, because now that you're developing awareness in the first soul tool, you've taken that awareness and taken a look at your life, at what's not working, longings and discontents. You're clear on the things you want to change from a place of knowing that you're more than those patterns. Now it's to lay down some new track, because all life is patterns. Literally, the basis of literally science is that there are patterns that we can study and look at and have a hypothesis about, and then learn more about. Like, that's the scientific side, but even spiritually, like there's a pattern of creation. And this is a complete side note, but if anyone's interested in the pattern of life from the spiritual sense, just do a quick Google search, look up the flower of life. That's the creation pattern of all things. I actually have it on my wall right here as a woodcut. Yeah. So that's the pattern of creation it's science too, but it's spiritual kind of basis of the pattern of life. So we want to create a new pattern. It's like, you're aware of the patterns that are not working, you don't want in your life anymore. And now the third soul tool is to ask the question, what would I love? To start to discover what that new pattern is. But that question is deceptively simple. My mentor, when she taught this question to me, she said it's the most powerful question that she has ever come across in her life. And she's in her 70s now. She's been studying transformation for I think it's over 50 years now. And so that's given some weight to me. That's like, okay, this question there's importance to this. And here's why. When we ask ourselves the question, what would I love? It bypasses the intellect and goes straight into our heart space, that we can connect with who we're here to be and what we're here to do. Because the intellect will try to argue and think like, oh, like, is that possible? Could you do that? Are you worthy enough? Like, you don't have the experience. Like, should you? Like, oh, what are my friends and family going to say? Like, they're going to reject me. Like, so the mind starts spinning stories to take us away from our purpose. But there is a silent, or at least soft, knowing that we all have, that's within our heart space. And it's not something that it's like we have to think up a dream or think up what our purpose is. That's where a lot of people get stuck. They're trying to think, like, intellectualize the process. Is like, what is my purpose? Which is not a bad question to ask, but it's still working with the mind rather than the heart. So that question, what would I love? It goes right to the heart, and it goes, at least cuts past or cuts away from the normal, usual intellectual way of looking at what should I do with my life, or what is my purpose? Because that's common training that we all have, or programming. And it's not bad, or it's just is what it is up until now. Like, especially in our Western society, we're very intellectual. And so the common questions come up as like, what should I do? Or what do I think I can do to live my life to the greatest possibility that I would love? Like, it stops us to a degree, because if we only work with the intellect, we only have our past experience to go off of, or what we've seen from others. But guess what? That's not how our purpose comes through. In fact, my favorite example, because I love flying or just aerodynamics, and I'm in training to get my pilot's license. And I love the story of the Wright brothers, because it was a passion project for them to discover man-powered flight, and not for the money, not for the fame, but for liberating humanity from the confines of Earth or the gravity of Earth so that we can have more freedom. That was their purpose. And they felt that it was from their heart. And guess what? It was never been done before. And so there's literally no possible way that they could have intellectualized their way to that end result, which, I mean, heck, they had to use their intellect, and there's something to be said about that. Like our brain it's not to, completely disregard our brain and our intellect and our intelligence, which it's a powerful tool, but it's not meant to be the master of our life. The heart is meant to be that space where we're giving it the full presence. And then we use our intellect to help ourselves live our purpose. But it starts with that question, what would I love? And I can almost guarantee you, I don't know exactly, but those Wright brothers probably had that question, a version of that on their heart.
Totally. And I love it because actually I've never heard it said that way. And as soon as you say, I mean, even when I close my eyes and say, what would I love? I go straight into the heart. It's just, and as soon as I say, what is my purpose? Right away, I go into my brain, right? And then you start thinking about, okay, school and my parents and work. Whereas here, what would I love? It's just so expensive and so infinite and so authentic. If that makes sense. So
100%.
I love that question. What would I love? And it reminded me actually of one of my teachers, the twin rays, always say, feel with your, think with your heart and feel with your mind. And it's just, it's a different way of the opposite way of what we've been taught to do. And just dropping into your heart. So I love that you say, what would you love? Because it's simple, but so powerful. So I'll be doing it myself tonight, actually.
Awesome.
Thank you for this tool.
You're welcome.
This is beautiful. So now these are really, really beautiful tools. So if you can recap, just because I know we went through all the details, but if you can recap all three of them in like one sentence.
Sure. Yeah. So the three basic soul tools to start with is first, notice what you're noticing so that you have more awareness and space between who you are and your patterns that have been in your life, maybe up until now. Second, you go into noticing your longings and discontents to be aware of what you'd love to change. And then you ask the question, what would I love? And you can even add, what would I love instead? If you notice, especially the discontent, because that's something you really want to change. Whereas the longing can be directly connected to what would I love? So notice what you're noticing, notice your longings and discontents, and then ask the question, what would I love? And go beyond maybe the conditioned way of thinking and feel into that answer.
Perfect. Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And so one thing I would like to talk about lastly is the Soul Blueprint, which is a beautiful tool also that if you want to call it a tool that you put together. So can you tell the audience a little bit about what the Soul Blueprint is? Absolutely.
It's a 11-page guidebook that you can download for free that will walk you through these soul tools. So it's a pretty straightforward way of seeing it. But there's a couple other things that I add in there that can help create more space between the patterns in your life that you've had up until now and your soul. So you can get more connected with who you really are and then dream from that place. And then at the very end of the guidebook, which is, I think, is the most important thing, is to create your potentially first vision statement. It's similar to, say, a vision board that you may have heard of or done yourself.
Yep.
It's not just pictures, though, but you paint the pictures with your words in a written document so that it becomes an energetic blueprint for the life that you would love to live that's aligned with your soul. So there's a whole guide to go through that.
Gotcha. So would it be correct to say that almost like a mission statement? It's a soul purpose statement of who you.
Yeah, in a way, it's a little bit more. What's the word for it? There's more space than just a mission statement, because usually a mission statement is like a sentence or a paragraph. Yep. A vision statement is where you're writing out what your life is like 3 years from now, so that you're really getting connected with what reality do you want to create? What kind of patterns does that show up as? And you're describing your life as if you were talking with someone 3 years from now, and that you have are updating them on your life. So it's literally a whole, I give a page to write out your vision statement in the soul purpose blueprint. But when I work with clients, like their vision statement is often a couple of pages to get clear on the specificity of that vision that aligns with your purpose. So it's more, maybe more expansive, or there's more space to write out your vision.
Okay, fantastic. And this is a beautiful gift that you have for this audience as well that will be shared. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So thank you. This is such a beautiful conversation. And anything else you would like to add to the audience today, Kevin?
The one thing I would end off with is we touch on this a little bit, but I really believe this is the foundation of everything that I teach. And I think it's the foundation of life, is that life force within you, it's literally breathing you, it's beating your heart right now. That is life itself seeking to emerge more and more by means of you. So as you use these soul tools, just know that you're connecting with who you really are and connecting with your higher power. Call it God, call it spirit, call it source, the universe, whatever label you want. There is this life that is seeking to emerge by means of you. And so whatever you may feel stuck with up until now, just know that you're more than that. You may not feel that or really have a deep connection to that knowing yet, but as you, especially even being here, like Liorah and the interviews that she's got, like you're right on track. Just trust that you're in the right spot, and that the next steps you'll take on your journey is will work for you as you're aligned with spirit. So you got this.
Thank you so much.